Can you hear me well?
Yeah. So a very good evening to all of you and a good morning to those who are joining from the West. So we welcome you all for a contained series. We have with us today Alisha Pathak, who I'm so happy to be connected with thanks to Mayank Arya. He works a lot in Uttarakhand, through video, through his images. A lot of you may have encountered his work, and those who haven't, please do. One fine day on WhatsApp, he hurriedly wrote, he said, Sonali, I want to talk to you. I was like, what is this about? Let me wake up properly and then let's talk. And he told me about Alisha, that how he met her, and he said she's an amazing person and you need to connect with her. So we connected, and there she is, Alisha. Now, who is Alisha? She'll tell you a lot more about herself in a bit, but let me introduce her. Alisha has done her MS in Interdisciplinary Sciences from IISER Pune. She has majored in physics and biology. She works a lot on environment in Dharamshala. So that's a connect with the Himalayas. And not only that, she is a mountaineer. And that's so important, right? Be a you have the passion for the Himalayas, and that's very, very important. And we were having this discussion a few days ago, and she says, oh my God, there'll be scholars, and my perspective is different. I said, well, that's what this platform is all about. You don't have to be a PhD, a doctor, to be on this forum. Just the passion is enough, and what you're doing is a perspective that has to be known by others, even by us, because people like us, we are very trained in a particular thought process. We may have our own points of views, but we forget sometimes to think like, from a clear space. And that clear space with the perspective that comes with the sciences as well, the training that you have, I think that's very important. So Alisha will talk about Selku, the tale of a shepherd turned deity. And that's so fascinating because these deities in the central and the western Himalayas, they really blow us away by how animated they are. They're so human-like. So how the stories of transformation, of adaptation are inspiring, to say the least. So Alisha, over to you. And at this time, I would ask all participants to have their videos off and their mics muted. We will start the question and answer session as a panel discussion today with Dr. Anjali Kapila. And of course, Mayank will be somewhere there. I hope he's online, where he can give the inputs on his images and his videos. And so, Alisha, please commence.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Sonali. It's a delight to be connected to you and actually to be brought to this community of scholars who take interest in the Himalayas. So, as introduced, I would try and make this talk as interactive as possible, because it's a journey and a story is best told when the audience is listening to it. And if I can just see that happen, that would be great. So if there are any questions, please don't hesitate before stopping me and asking me the question. And today is the World Rivers Day, and today is also the World Tourism Day. And that makes it a very interesting juncture, because I'm going to talk about my connection with the river Ganga and how that brought me to Selku. My first introduction to this valley happened because of a mountaineering course which happens in Uttarakhand, and we were as any trainee would, we were a part of an expedition which was in the upper reaches of the Himalayas, and one of the instructors told me, whom we had become pally with, that if you want to come visit this area again, you should try and do it in the festival of Selku. And Selku is something which you don't particularly hear about if you're from the low reaches within India. So I was like, okay, maybe someday, who knows? And when you're climbing, you hear all these stories about, like, you should not break the step, you should not make too much noise. There's a lot of story about spirits. And I was enchanted by these spirits, and hence the mention of Selku, because it was a story of a spirit who had gone to become a devta. who was protecting a certain clan of shepherds. Now, my understanding of this festival was quite rudimental, and I didn't believe it. Like, if you think of it, the kind of stories you hear about when you hear about Selku, it's primarily around how a man who is taken over by the spirit can walk on axes. Now, so this is happening around 2015 when I first heard about this festival. It's this.
Alisha, sorry to
Hmm?
intervene. Your earphones. Somebody
Hmm.
on chat has said there is some kind of disturbance, some static. So if you could remove your earphones, would that work? I don't know.
Is this better?
I don't know. There's still some static.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go on.
Is this better?
Yeah. Now.
Is this fine?
Yeah, this is much better. Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I
Sorry,
didn't realize.
I was having that on chat, so I needed to address that. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. So we were back in. So I first learned about this festival in 2015, and as life gets, we got rolling. And then came 2017. A friend of mine was doing this long walk along the river Ganga in order to document the life around the river. And I decided, with the understanding of my interest in Himalayas, that I would join for the entire mountain bit along the river, which was from Rishikesh all the way to Gangotri. So we start walking. You start hearing these, like when you walk, you see scientific acumen. You look at the world in a more black and white fashion. This is possible. This is not possible. This is normal. This is paranormal. This is hoax. This is truth. There's a hypothesis. There's a result. So coming from that mindset, when you start walking along the river and you are experiencing things in a much slower form, you eventually came around people who had been taken over by spirits, as one would say, and abnormal things were visible to us. And at the same time, I was reading a book back then called The Raj of Harsil, which was about this man who had left the war in Afghanistan, who was a part of the British Army, and come and settled in this part of the Himalayas, which was part of the Tiri kingdom, which was back in the day in early 1800s, not part of the bigger British Empire, which India was a part of. And at the time I was reading this book, there was a mention of Lord Someshwar. And what Frederick Wilson, who had moved to who had moved to this part of Himalayas, had done was that he had started deforesting the land in order to create the entire to supply wood to the lower regions, the canals and even the Indian Railways. So, and this man, though he had settled in Harsil, he had he had not taken to the culture. There was still a huge difference in his understanding. He really liked the place, but he didn't believe in the set methods which had existed for many centuries, the spirits and the stories. So he would challenge the hierarchy of uh, the religious belief in that space. So now the story goes to 1861, when Frederick Wilson has come back, and this is a part, it's an excerpt, and it's a legend that it would be around this date, but it is said that it's 1861. And Frederick Wilson has come back to Mukpa, and which is right next to Harsil, in very close to Gangotri, in on the way to Gangotri. So what Frederick Wilson does is that he goes there and learns that there's a festival being celebrated to talk about Lord Someshwar. Everybody is gathered together. The axes have been brought out. The spirit comes upon a person, walks on the axe, and Frederick Wilson is not particularly impressed. So he asks the next day. A couple of days later, the Pandit asks, "So how do you like the festival?" He said, "I'm not too sure if the axes were sharp enough." He's like, "Sure, let's do one thing. Why don't you bring out an axe of your choice and let's again call for the spirit and make him walk?" Then you're like, okay, let's do that. The axes are brought out, and then the spirit comes upon a person supposedly called Brahm, and then he walks on the axes. And as he walks and comes off, then then Frederick is a little taken aback and he's like, I still think it's a good show. And then he again challenges the god that you do not, you are being a trickster, you're being a magician. And then again the god comes on asking. So he says, why can you tell me what is in my hand? He says, in your hand it is gold. So the story in short is that because of challenging the god, what Frederick Wilson had done was he had incurred the spirit. He had challenged the spirit of the ability the god possessed, and hence the god cursed him then that none of your history or of your lineage would exist much later. You were hearing about all these stories, and now when we were walking the Ganga, we realized that none of the vestiges of Frederick Wilson was actually visible. You didn't know anybody who knew about him other than people in the Upper Gangetic Valley. Then nobody knew about the kind of work he had done. Like as people who have been studying history in India, we had no idea about where the wood came from, what happened in the Upper Gangetic Valley, where was the Devdar coming from, why were the trees chopped, why was it only one side of the river. Now, as you read, and where was the lineage? Because all of the Ashi Hall in Dehradun was made by Frederick Wilson, but nobody knows about it. So his importance in history was lost. Now, if you come from that and then you start walking the Ganga and you listening to these stories, you start seeing the spirit. So I was quite taken over by maybe I should come visit this festival once. Flash forward to 2019. It is September. I've been planning to go visit this festival for very many years, since 2015 to be honest. And I'm invited by this family in Sukhi, which is a village short of Harsal on the top, which also has the best apples. So we are in Sukhi, and I land myself in Sukhi, and very few people know of the festival. So people are quite taken aback that somebody who is not from this region has taken interest to come here. And then because being a blank slate, I had only read much little bit about it. When you're there, you see people gathered together. Now the story, if one looks at Selku, has multiple perspectives. So we divided in three sections. A, why is it called Selku? Why is it celebrated in this part of the year? The second part is how this myth and the story of Lord Someshwar came around. Who is Lord Someshwar exactly? And the third part is how is this festival celebrated? So let's tackling the second part first. The myth goes for Lord Someshwar as that there was once a very, like in Hindi it's called Chanchal, like a notorious young man with special abilities, and and Lord Someshwar, being a shepherd, has has a presence not only in this part of the valley but as the along the entire region of the Himalayas, starting from Kashmir, going to Himachal, and then coming into Uttarakhand from Tons Valley into Yamunotri, and then into Gangotri. So the Lord actually travels pretty much like a shepherd. So everywhere has a version of this god. So the story goes as that there was once a boy who was notorious and had come across this Sanjeevni booty, which he had seen. Like he was up in the mountains and he saw an eagle playing with a snake. So what eagle would do, it would use its beak to peck on the snake, split the snake into halves, and then go collect this herb, touch it on the snake, and the snake would join again. And this would happen multiple times. This boy was baffled. So what he did was that he took the jari booty from the eagle and then touched it on the snake, and then the snake was fine. The eagle flew away, but this boy suddenly had this booty, and this is understood as the Sanjeevni booty. Now, using the Sanjeevni booty, then this being the notorious boy, he came back to the village, and they challenged him. Like he said that I'll show you a trick, in which and they're like that I can put two halves of the goat together, which has been cut. Everybody thought that he was faffing. So what they did was they're like, okay, you do it. If you're able to do it, all the goats of the villages of this entire region would be yours. He's like, sure, let's do it. So a goat is brought, it's cut in two. He takes a cover, uses the Sanjeevni booty, joins the goat together, and everybody is baffled. And because it was a challenge and he's won it, everybody gave him the goats. Now this gave rise to this made him the ruler of the goats of that region. The story goes that he being notorious if somebody, and there are multiple versions of this, and the one which I know of is that Someshwar was then walking as a shepherd in a certain section in the mountains where his uncle told him that, can you take care of this salt? So he takes the salt, and because he was not particularly familiar with the method, so he gave, when you give salt to goats, you give it, he didn't know how exactly to give it, so he threw the salt in the direction. The goats got voraciously hungry and they attacked him, and that pushed him off the cliff. So the dangar, which is the axe which hung on the back of the of Someshwar, cut his body into two parts, so the upper part and the lower part. So but because when he was falling, he took the sanjeevani booty and put it in his mouth, he was able to survive. Now, I'm not too sure if the body joined again, but this made the myth of Someshwar, that people could call on him to tell them stories. So Someshwar not only was somebody who had an understanding or had access to Sanjeevani Booty, but also was somebody who was known for being able to control weather. So as legends go in the Himalayas, there are multiple legends associated with the myth of Someshwar. Now, coming back to the section of me visiting Selku. Now, Selku as a festival is celebrated in the last full moon of the summer, in the month of Bhado, which is after Savan. So that is usually around 15, 16 September. And the word Selku actually translates to Ponsoya. It's a celebration. Because on this festival, no matter how far you are, wherever you are, everybody comes back to the village and celebrates together. And it's a time when especially the daughters of the village, the sisters of the brothers and everybody, they come back. So it's the daughters of the village who come back. Now, my experience of the Selku festival is primarily of of Mukpa and of Sukhi Top, where I was invited. And I land myself in the festival on the second day, not the first day. Once once the festival begins, it's considering it's called Soega Kon. It starts at night, so people gather together. They burn a firecracker equivalent of a poi, and in next day in the morning, and then they bring the palki out, which is the Lord Someshwara's palki, and then they do puja around it, and everybody gathers together to celebrate this. And this brings everybody together, and next day in the morning they make this circle, like this wherever Someshwar has been, that area is cordoned, and in that area then palki is made to sit and festivities begin. I'll just show some pictures here. Hang on. Entire screen. Share. Can people see my screen? Hello?
Not as yet, no, Alisha.
Okay. Can one see it now? Hello, can you see
Yes,
it now?
we can see small thumbnails of your now a bigger picture. Yeah. Yes, now
Now you can see it.
yeah.
Yeah. So the festival runs around this. So this is the Gangotri temple in Muplek. So this is the, as they say, Maika, the maternal home of Gangotri. So this is the village Mukpa. Which is also the home to most of the priests of the Gangotri temple. And what we can see in the center is the palki, which palki of Lord Someshwar done this time when the palki is already out and everybody is drumming to it. So I would begin with the images from the first section, which is of this book called Raja of Harsal, the Gangotri temple. Yeah. So myself in this area around this time, begin with the images from the first section. Frederick Wilson had been had taken all the timber and put it down. So the story of Raja of Harsil is, so if you go along the river, you can find these spots where these timber has been placed, and like these spots where timber checks were created, and one can see these posters which have been put, which are talking about how they lost the timber, and which is one of the biggest losses in the entire region. And this is where what remains of the Frederick House, which was burned down as cursed by Someshwar. Um, yeah, so we're back at Palki. Now the festival talks about now once the Someshwar, now the festivities go in four sections. First, the palki is brought out, and as the belief goes, like people come and they offer the flowers on the palki, the axes are placed on the palki, and then the spirit comes upon an individual, and the palki then starts dancing to people's rhythm. So once we think of, I'll just come back. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
Alisha, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay. I don't know what's happening. Yeah. Yeah. So now considering the palki,
We can't see you, Alisha.
I don't know what's happening.
It's okay. Technology is like that. So we are very
Yeah.
patient. So take your time if um
Okay. Um. Anyway, so where is Someshwar Asan? So one can see in this image here that there's this area which you can see as the green hedge around the green grass which has been spread around the main palki. Uh, that is called Someshwar's Asan. So wherever in each village they create this asan in which the palki will come and sit, and that's where Someshwar will come upon. Now, this now as the festivities begin, the first half of it is primarily uh, when the pujaris do the puja and they call upon the spirit, and there is an individual which who is not an individual necessarily, anybody who is recognized, on which the spirit will come upon. Now, as a person who does not, who comes again from the scientific acumen, this is a little hard to believe because you're seeing somebody who's playing the Ran Singha, which is a trumpet. I'll show the videos in a bit, which is this trumpet, and uh, and and you can see a stark change in the behavior, as though the person is in trance as he plays the trumpet. So, and then these axes are placed, which is called dangri, are placed on the palki, and that is then carried, and then people offer the flowers. The flower which is usually given in this is this wildflower called Brahma Kamal, which is collected from the upper reaches, again closer to the tarns of the Himalayas, and people bring it down. So then people, then their folks are called around and everybody starts playing the drums. These drums sort of excite the spirit. So the spirit starts is welcomed with a roll of drums, and then people carry the palki on their shoulder, and the palki moves by itself. There is a beat to each. I will just show video for that. One. So one can see that there is an individual on which the spirit comes, and then as the drum rolls, the spirit gets all the more excited. So as we continue watching this video, you can see the one can see the devs are getting excited, and then also thanking, like touching, like blessing the drum, blessing the person on which the spirit would come. And nobody is really making the palki move. It moves by itself, which is hard to believe. Like how, and because it's so heavy, and to move it easily is not a task. Like I tried lifting it, it was really heavy, and it's not a task. So it really just boils down to a belief. What do we believe in? So for us who live in a city, to witness something like this is quite out of the ordinary. So the palki then is blessing the pandit. It's blessing the girls who have come from for back to the village for the festival. It is blessing the drums, and then one can see that it also. So you can see that these axes are being placed. So the person right at the back, who is with a orange cloth around the waist, is on whom the spirit has come, and you can see all these axes being laid down. So the palki chooses also the axe on which it would want the Lord to walk upon. So so the axe, the person on whom. So now what you see here is when the gentleman with the orange cloth around the head, it's on him the spirit has come upon, and the person is walking on the axis. Now we can hear everybody whistling. So the whistling bit is because a shepherd whistles for its goat. So similarly, Lord Someshwar actually rubs his ears and asks people to whistle, because that's what gives him the energy. And everybody is whistling for him to get energized. And one thing very unique to this entire procession was the fact that the person on which the spirit comes is he takes grains of rice in his hands, tosses in the air, and then catches some, calls someone name, and actually does a prophecy to them, as though they can ask them questions and he has answers for it. So like so what happened, at least in Mukba, was the gentleman on whom the spirit came, and they walked all the way to the almost the end of the village and back. And once that was over, everybody gathered around and danced in Mukba. Now this is the festival of Mukba. What was interesting to me was actually the festival of Sukhi Top, which was much quieter, much smaller. In Sukhi Top, the spirit doesn't come on everybody. It comes on over here. one can see that the spirit comes only on one single individual who is around 85 years of age. He could hardly walk. And when the spirit came, the person, hello,
Yes, Alisha. Now we can
when the
see you.
spirit came, yeah, when the spirit came on this individual, on this gentleman, you could see a stark difference in the way the person was looking. So he's 85 years old, and he can he embodied a spirit that he was tossing these dangers up in the air, which is hard to believe. So as wait, I'll just show you the video. So the gentleman right at the back is he's 85 years old, and he is the one who is going to walk on the dangers here.
We cannot see the visuals,
Hmm?
Alisha. We cannot see the screen. We can
You
see
cannot see the
you.
screen.
Yeah, we can see you, but yeah.
Sorry. So in Sukhi, the way spirit, and perhaps this is something which I missed in Mukba, was when the spirit came. So the palki first greets to the god of the village, which is Nag Deta and Sukhi top, and then it greets the temple which is in the square there, and then it greets the gentleman and makes the gentleman walk ahead and lead. And then the palki goes back. People run with the palki. Maybe the palki is making the move, goes and tries to pass the spirit from the palki into the individual. And then that's when the power comes in the individual to choose the axe and start walking on it. Which so So the disbelief of somebody who is so senior to be able to take on such a power and then be able to walk says a lot about what we understand of nature is, and from a very scientific purview is very limited, because in a natural circumstance for somebody to be able to walk on sharp edge is impossible, and and especially with being energized with the help of whistles, this is far from what we understand as reality. So the question comes back to, why is Selku important? Now, Selku, though, is now coming from a space of people coming together to celebrate, or daughters coming back, the first harvest being gifted to them. At the same time, calling upon a spirit in order to, in which the spirit, because it is impressed by everybody's devotion to it, he does a show, like the spirit comes in the body, walks on the axe, reads future for a few people, and then goes back and collapses. And to remind people that there is still, in a way, magic existing in the world, and you can tap into this magic in order to still look beyond what we understand as immediate reality. Now, how did it? So, how did it impact me as an individual? Was when I first heard of Selku and the spirits in the Himalayas. I too scoffed at it, because it's improbable for something like this to come together and for people to call for spirits and to be able to express and showcase that we still hold the power in the Himalayas. Now, if you take something like that and then you put it in perspective of reading things like Frederick Wilson's story and to be able to witness it, you start challenging what you understand as normal in the world. Though the festival is just one example of what I understand as spirits, but there are multiple incidences in which these gods have expressed power, and I have only heard them. I have seen one of them in front in this festival, and sometimes while walking the river. It is interesting to see one's own view challenged and perhaps giving rise to a possibility of ways of seeing and thinking which otherwise we would not be witness of had we not been to this landscape. With that, I'll close and I open the floor for questions. It would be nice if I can tell more about it if there is some question.
Thank you, Alisha, for that wonderful talk with those observations. Though there was a time lag, when the video plays, that normally happens in webinars. But yes, thank you for opening up this world of Selku for us. And of course, I did not know about Selku, but while observing it, and I'm sure those who have worked in the Himalayas, this is so similar to what we see, especially in the Kullu Valley. We have so many devtas, and and I was looking at the palki. It's just I saw that the differences are that the poles are kind of elongated, with the Selku, while the ones in Kulu are shorter, but the ones in Lahore are really long with Raja Gepan. And the way the deity blesses, very similar. The Bajantari is very similar. But one thing was, I noticed that the Bajantaris were wearing Kinori caps. So is this region the region of the Mahasu Devta also, is one question that I want to ask. Okay, because that ties in with um, um, the Mahasu region, where we had a talk by Dr. Lokesh Ori a few months back, where he talked about that connection, where how the Raja of Rampur Bisheher kind of connects with the people of Uttarakhand, and that's why the caps, the Kinori caps, become important. So, do you have any idea of that? And with that, I'll open the platform for Dr. Kapila to also come in and answer the side of things that are more anthropological. But yes, your perspective about how you were questioning the energies and all of that, and how it is so different, the world of magic, so shamanistic, if I may use the word for lack of a better word. But yes, very fascinating indeed. So if you could shed light on that.
So, as rightly pointed out, so the story of Shelku is supposedly come from the Kulu Valley, actually, even before that, from the Kashmir Valley. So, as shepherds move in certain areas, so they move from one valley to another, the paths which would connect Shelku, Someshwar moved along those paths. So, Shelku is not only celebrated in Harsil and in Mukba, it's also celebrated on not only in Gangotri Valley, it is celebrated in Tons Valley. That's where you have Masudevta, even in Yamunotri, even in Rampur Bhushahar, even in Kullu, and even in Kashmir. So, and it's called Someshwar or something of a similar sound in all these regions. But is Someshwar same as Mahasu? No. Mahasu's story is slightly different.
No, I know Mahasu's story is different. I was just pointing to the region, overall region, that allows the
Yeah.
people to wear the Kinori caps. That's all. I know that they're different, but.
Yeah, so I've only visited Mahasu temple again, which is ahead of Morifam, right? And it is similar. So it also talks like when I first heard of the festival, when I first learned that the stories traveling between these areas, it also talks about migration and how communities worked. From a very academic point of view, I was like, this is actually a great documentation of how culture has moved from one place to another, like caps and food. It's a way of documenting history. So, if you look from the entire belt in which Someshwar moves, there and having the same god also means that there are certain beliefs which are common in these regions. And the one fact which connects all this area, interestingly, would be the shepherd, because a shepherd moves in valleys. A shepherd does not move from one city, they don't stay confined. And hence, it's almost a spirit which transcends boundaries. Otherwise, you have devas of every village. Like every village, from what I understand, has a special kul dev or devi, which they adhere to. But Someshwar transcends all of that and moves between the entire region.
Very well. So we take our first question. Dr. Nandini Bhattacharya, over to you.
Thank you. It's a very interesting talk. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear properly the entire bit. So
Okay.
it is very unfortunate, but it is very interesting because it is kind of a women-centric festival. But what I gather that it is also, it speaks of shamanistic tradition. Am I correct? And
Yeah. Mhm.
and the entire Himalayas, not Himalayan, the entire Himalayas has a kind of shamanistic tradition. If you go to east, if you go to northeast, they have this kind of shamanistic tradition. And Vijayalakshmi Bose, I found, Vijayalakshmi also pointed out that in Bengal, like this Chorok Gajon festival, this kind of a power and a superhuman power it possesses on the sannyasis, those who are doing fasting and doing begging for a month. So don't you think that there is a common thread in the Himalayas, in this shamanistic tradition, and it also has some links in other areas, not very far from the Himalayas.
Very rightly pointed, ma'am. Though it's not only the shamanistic regions within that, like I come from Jharkhand and there is a place called Devghar. And in these areas also they celebrate Tara. So I believe shamanistic traditions still survive in certain sections within India, though I believe with the way religion has found itself within India, there is there is a loss of this information. But sticking to the Himalayas, like I there is the celebration of the shamanistic kind is not only for Someshwar. For example, even there is something called, and I believe Sonali would know this better, the the Kulu Mela, which happens, in which all the devtas and devis they come together to celebrate with the Kulu devta. And that is also in which again the palkis are carried, in which again the palki dances, and people celebrate it very close to, as mentioned earlier by Sonali, that they take over and they bless and they do these prophecies and they stop and ask for things. So the shamanistic belief for all of them still exists. But like, and this is where the strife with the sciences happen, because in the sciences you start questioning things which are beyond our understanding. And the way education is going, in my opinion, it is sort of curtailing our understanding of what cannot be reason, must not be true, it must be hoax. And hence perhaps I as an individual have not learned about it, but if I tell this to my grandfather, he's not quite surprised with like this happening. So I'm quite perplexed. So if somebody else has any ideas about how it is practiced in, say, other parts, like I know Kamakya also has a strong shamanistic tie-up, so they can throw light on it, it would be much better. I'm a little short in information here, but I've seen this
Actually,
happening.
I will share one of my experience. It was in
Mhm.
Darjeeling Shitong village. While you were saying that it is beyond science, and there was a festival. I mean, it is not a question. It is very briefly. I'm sharing my experience, and they organized that. I mean, because I was there, it was Etwar Sunday festival, So, I mean, they made all the arrangement for me. I was working on the Magar community and the Lepcha community. And then, well, that day I was not quite well. And when I went, there were three priests. And they came to know that I was not feeling well. I had a lot of body ache. And they touched. I think Anjali, maybe Sonali will be able to explain. They touched my body very lightly with the sticks, and one can't believe that my pain had subsided completely.
Wow. Yeah. I've
But
heard of something called One Khandi Mata also. So if you're like lost in the forest, you call upon her, she takes care of you. There are all these like black magic is sort of rampant. So it's just beyond my belief. I cannot believe these things
yeah,
happen, but they supposedly work.
but
And
I
people are
should
strong.
sorry, I'd like to say something, and it is in conjunction with what Dr. Nandini Bhattacharya said. So a lot of this, I totally come from the premise, okay, because I not talking about hoax or anything. A lot of anthropologists work on this, and of course they are thrown into something that they have no idea of, and they suddenly see this magic happening, right? And there are a lot of theories in anthropology which talk about this kind of different layers of magic. But when we talk about the sciences, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can be transferred from one form to another. And we see that
Mm,
energy being transferred. So if we look at
mm,
it not from the point of view of, what has been made into films about spirits and ghosts and all of that, but if we purely look at it from an energy point of view, it starts making sense about how energy is being transferred. And you can see that transference of energy. I have been to such locales where suddenly with the beating of the drums, the crescendo of the drums and the run singers increases, and the crowd goes into a frenzy, and that kind of energizes the energy to come in, and you can see the palkis like trembling and just and there are few of Kullu here who can also add to that because it's a tradition and they're the insiders. And you're right,
mm,
it's very heavy, even I've tried holding, it's very heavy. But the way, sometimes I've observed the palki going like this, without the shoulders moving. So I've tried to be skeptic, but then the best approach is of observation, that don't question it. It is what it is, what it is. And of course, there are layers of these things, with the good tradition of the oracle speaking for the village. And uh, just don't quite just observe it and understand that there are layers of shamanism, there'll be layers of Hinduism, there'll be layers of Buddhism also at times. I've seen so many deities in the Western Himalayas who have Buddhist leanings, tantric leanings, yeah, but these
mm,
have been added on over time, right? So that's what I wanted to say. And even in Egypt, for example, in ancient Egypt, we had oracles and the palki. When we talk about the palki, we had this whole thing about the priests wanting to take the gods once a year in Luxor, so that people from the public could venerate. And they would take them on this solar bark, which is a boat. And the boat would move side to side and answering, the questions. So very similar traditions. They're all wired very similarly, you know, energetically. So
mm,
yes.
I'll
Uh,
add an anecdote here. Like
yeah.
in Sukhi, one day, like the next day, so the family which was hosting me, they were going on this yatra of the Char Dham. And they called for the spirit to take permission that, hey, we want to go for this because you have to, before you take a journey, you're supposed to take this permission. And the spirit is angry. And it's not Someshwar, it's another devta of that village. And saying that the spirit is angry and they have to pacify the spirit. And then I was quite stunned by how deeply this is. It's as though almost like an elderly taking care of the village who has known this space for so long that knows answers for the past and the future. And yeah, and it's visible even in, like, I live in Jharkhand, so even in the tribal communities there is a strong belief of the spirits within the trees, in the stones, and they wish and they take permission from it. And it's new. I
And
don't
you
know a better
also
word than new.
And you also see the adaptability of these deities. In fact, there earlier on, before the idea of governance took over, a democratic form of government, they were like ruling over these small principalities, keeping the community together. So the whole idea is for the community to be together, to
Yeah.
answer their queries, to be there for them during times of crisis, and the kind of accountability, keeping it all together. It all seems to be that, a repository of history where everybody is kind of bows down to the supreme, and then that works within the confines of the governance, right? So it's almost like a little kingdom working, adapting, evolving, keeping tradition and continuity, right?
Yeah. And there are hierarchies also, from what I understand, within them also.
Yes, that who goes to whom, who doesn't go to which one, and who dances, like who goes into a frenzy, like all of this, it's kind of decided. And even when these so-called shamans they meet, they're very synchronized. They know what they're doing. Their dances, they're all very similar. Um, like you showed the axes, they were walking on the axes, which is very,
Mhm.
when you see that, you're like blown away. And here too, in Kulu, for example, they pierce, iron rods and no blood comes out and they're not disinfected. How is that possible? You're like, oh God, COVID. That was my first thought when I saw that. So it boggles the mind.
Don't mess with them.
So now we have Dr. Vijayalakshmi Bose. If you could ask your question.
Yeah, first of all, it gives me great sort of enthusiasm that somebody who's a practitioner and just an observer can come onto this platform. I know Sonali's been asking me that. I'm saying I'm not an expert. So thank you, Alisha, for this lovely talk. Couple of very quick things. As far as shamanism and predictions are concerned, Africa has the Umlimo, who is able to articulate and predict. And apparently the Umlimo has predicted things like earthquakes and who knows, even COVID. Okay, so, and the other thing is Chorokir Mela is dedicated to Shiv. So it's very interesting to see that Shivji is definitely also part of these, and it's a religious, sociological, anthropological connect, because the Shivji that we're looking at during Chorok is not the Shivji from the high Himalayas with his jata and worshipped as a god. Here he's coming down and with the people. And Chorokir Mela, people can lie on nails, they walk on sharp surfaces, right, Nandini? They walk through fire, and
Yes,
otherwise they're just
they
mendicants. They're
jumped
just
on
going.
sharp edges, like sharp
Yes.
knives. I mean, it is very interesting.
Yeah,
And
and
nothing happens.
nothing happens to them. So that is something I wanted to say. The third thing was about possession and the typical pirouette that you see of of circles. It's very interesting to see that shamanism is circles, Sufi is circles. So when you're invoking something, the arti is circle. So is there something, I don't know whether it's been studied, I don't know enough about the subject, but it's a very circular uh, pirouetting that is done. And that is also true for a lot of these folk festivals and all that you see. And the fourth thing, I'm not speaking for Anjali, but Anjali's book documents this very well, of when the smaller, the lesser gods come to the Ganga to give obeisance to her. And all the villages bring their gods, however small, however big, and you gather on this meadow. I don't know what, I don't remember quite what it is called, but there is this festival that is held in roughly the same region that you're talking about, Alisha. So thank you once again for a very illuminating talk.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I must have mentioned, I think I forgot to mention, Someshwar is actually a form of Shiv, supposedly, and also a form of Indra. So it's like
That's why I
I
said so,
won't.
because you said it was a form of Shiv. He was a form of
Mm,
Shiv. So that's why I said
mm.
Charuk Gajan is also Shiv.
And it's
So
said
people dress
because,
up like Shiv. They
oh, is
dress
it?
like
I have never
Shivji.
seen it.
Yes, you have
So,
Shiv Parvati Nach. You have a dance of Shiv and Parvati. And this
okay.
comes into the metro cities of Calcutta, and people wait for it. They wait, they give them food, they give them money, they tell them their wishes, so that if you can't travel there, your wishes are carried back with Shiv and Parvati. And often it's very interesting. Now, women dress as Parvati. But when I was growing up in Kolkata, men used to dress as Parvati. So, Horo, which is Shiv, Parvati
Mhm.
Nach, the dance of Shiv and Parvati, were actually both men. But you would never know the way they danced, the way they mimicked women. It was amazing. And again, this is possession, because otherwise they're just farmers, maybe not even landowners, migrant labor. What happens to them in these 15 days? You know, that is something I think that is worthy of study. And it resonates with whatever you've said, whatever Dr. Kapila has documented. Right, Nandini?
Yes, and someone said that you are talking about Ganga festival. No, it is not. It is a different festival, and it happens in April. It takes place in April.
Yeah, just before the Bengali New Year. Bengali New Year,
Yes,
second week of
yeah.
April. So this would be
That
around the
is on
10th or
the
something like
Sankranti
that.
day, on the last day of the
Sankranti,
Chaitra.
yes. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. That's when it is held.
and Someshwar is the one of the names of Shiv.
Shiv,
Actually,
yes. Yes.
it is not the form only; it is the name of the Shiv.
Name of Shiv.
Yeah,
That's why the Shiv Aarti has a verse on Someshwara.
yeah.
Yes.
So I have a question, Alicia. Were you able to kind of know the caste of the person who went into possession, and even the people who kind of beat the drums? Because I'm asking because I'm just thinking of how comparing it to other regions, that does it follow the same rules of ritual purity and all? If you could shed light on that.
Yes, thank you. So that's a different conversation altogether. So one thing which was observed when I went there was the person who plays the drums is a person of a lower caste. So when I was there, the trouble was nobody wanted to play the drums because people didn't want to play it anymore. They didn't want to associate it with the caste, at least in Sukhi talk. And the same happened. So every village has a certain set of drummers who would come from a certain community, and they would play the drum, and that would incite. And the person on whom the spirit comes, from what I understand, it's indifferent. It's not necessarily one caste. It's indifferent of the caste. And somebody also mentioned why the women not participating in this. So this is a question I also had. I didn't see a women carry the palki. And when I asked them, they said they don't carry the palki because it is heavy. But from the idea that the palki does not fall any weight upon the person, it's a little strange to call it heavy because it's not upon the individual. But the women do participate in a form of the dance. So caste of the drummer is of a person of the lower caste. The second on whom the spirit comes, we are not too sure. It can be anybody, and it can be not one individual. This year it came on 5 individuals in Mukba, and it chooses its own person. And then like when I was speaking to a gentleman, Rajnikant Semwalji, right before before the talk, and he was mentioning when people asked Somesh for this year, like, why are you coming on 5 people? It's so difficult to handle 5 people. He said that I will come on each individual because that is my ability, that I can come on anyone. So I think there is no caste associated with that.
Okay, so there's not a person designated to inside whom this deity comes, right? And I think about the women, I think it's more about ritual purity, because I've asked this question here as well, because women don't carry the palkis, but it's because of the menstrual cycle and all of those things associated with ritualistic purity. That's why. But the deity has come unannounced in women also. So, but they are not the spokesperson of the god or the goddess. The spokesperson is a person technically, and I'm talking about the Western Himalayas. So, Aniket, you there?
So there is someone
Yeah.
who is talking about how this. Mhm.
Uh, yeah, Alisha, thank you for a very interesting talk. For somebody who's not part of the scholarly community, which is overrated in any case, you gave a very, very interesting and grounded talk. There are one or two things I wanted to ask. Some of the questions Sonali's already flagged about the prevalence of the Pusheri cap, the green cap, which they wear. I also wanted to know. When they say that this devta is there in the Tons Valley and in Kullu and Kashmir, is there any record? Do they have they spoken about the devta traveling there? I mean, have these people traveled to villages in the Tons Valley to say, or to the Pabbar Valley, which is a tributary of the Tons, or somewhere in the Satluj Valley? Is there anything that they talk about? Any story of that? The second question I wanted to ask you was one of the comments you made towards the end of the talk was about how the girls of the village are coming back, and the first portion of the harvest is given to the girls of the village, or something like that. Could you tell us a little more about that? What exactly does it mean? I mean, what is the story behind giving the first portion of the harvest to the girls of the village? And I'm assuming these are girls who are married away from the village and they're coming back.
Thank you for asking that question. I'll address the second question first and then go to the first one because I see somebody else also point this in the comments. So the festival is quite women-centric in the fashion that, like, Selku, because the women have come back, the girls of the village, the daughters of the village as they're called, to and they would go back to their newer homes, and the first harvest, because this is the harvest season. I believe the harvest season starts from now and goes on till the Shera, right? The first, yeah, it will go on till the Shera. So the idea is to bring them back, to celebrate them coming back, and then whatever is the youngest harvest would be given to them, because they earlier there was no concept of giving money. So you give what you earn, you give something as a gift which can be taken back. And at least this was what was told to me, and that's the reason the first harvest is given in this period, because daughters have come back. And coming to the first question, I believe, which is about if somebody has documented this. So there has been documentation. So there's a song which I can drop as a link over here. It's called Kafuwa, which is about the traveling. So there are these songs which are sung in the festival, which have been passed down, and they do talk about movement of God from one place to another. Has somebody gone and documented this? I've been told there's a gentleman who has done his PhD on this and has been working on this for past 12 years. I tried to reach him, but I couldn't. And so I have not personally met somebody who has gone and visited these sites, but the oral history and oral tradition documented in form of songs does mention of the god traveling within the valleys. Have I answered both the questions? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, of course you have. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
This is yeah, sure.
I'll drop the link here, just hang on.
Thanks, Aniket. And now
Yeah,
we
that
have,
would be nice if you can give the link, especially to the guy who's doing a PhD there. If you have any contact.
He's a very senior gentleman. I can tell you his name. He teaches at the Delhi University. I'll drop his name here. What's his name? DN Bhaskar.
Okay.
into.
While Alisha does that, Aman, over to you for your next question. Aman Panta.
Thank you, Alisha, for this lecture. And my question is to you that I want to know that, like in the Himalayan region, there is a trend like now all the local gods are they are becoming more Hinduized. Like they are associated with the mainstream Hindu gods like Vishnu, Shiva, and all. This is a trend in the Himalayan, and you can find this thing into the Mohra, and in the palki, that the artwork in the palki you will find. Even in the temple, you will find that all the Hindu gods are there. It is in the. I want to know more about that. Do you have any idea about it, about the Selku and the Someshwar Maharaj? What in this how you will find it, like how local perceive it, like they are perceiving it, they feel like it is associated, they call themselves like they are the ye in devta ka avatar hai, us devta ka avatar hai, like that. And the second question is, as in the Himachal, uh, that many gods are like earlier they have they have control over the social economic activities of the villages, like they control the agro pastoral activities. Like even shepherds move from the lower valley to upper, they go to the local gods and ask for the permission, and sometimes give gods to local gods, and give do all the celebration. When they came back, they do all. But now with the decline of these pastoral agriculture economic activities in the valleys, so what kind of changes in the like especially there is a work in Himachal has done by the Mark Elimov. He called like now the local devtas, who's the pastoral devtas, are now they are the beggars, because that earlier they used to control. They call the gods are beggar. Particularly, he give the instance when they move from the sub gods, when they move from the Shimla, in the Shimla they especially stays in the Shimla Mall Road for a while to collect money, because when they move from there to other in the valleys, so they stays there for a while, and look the city people or those who are on the Mall Road give them the money. So he give this particular instance. So it happened in the Himachal, like after this they lose their even Aniket is here, he wrote about it, that after this land reform in Himachal, they lose their lands in Himachal. Like earlier they used to have a very they have like 10-20 bigas of own land, but after this delimitation or the land reforms, the many gods lose their land in the Himalayas, and they have also lose their control over the other activities. But now they have come up with this idea of there is a paper in the this Himalayan journal by the Scheller Hager. We call the now that role of the Mahasu is become healer, from ruler from the healer. It's very interesting paper where she shared that how that Mahasu has refined its role in the Himalayas. So I want to know that, do you find any kind of changes in this in practices of the Someshwar, and particularly you are talking about the Selku?
So my observation was Selku was very non-academic. Though I have observed in person, like when doing research in Mansiari and Tons Valley area, which was very academic, which is about the role of forests, that the understanding of gods in this region, as mentioned by you, is changing. They're better people than me. I think Dr. Kapila, even Mayank, who we should all definitely try and get on board here, can tell you more about this. So depending, like I believe from, and this is not from Selku, but in general understanding of how festivals work in these regions is, uh, you have a local devta. For example, you have the Nag devta, who is quite prevalent in this area, and he has a very different control on the landscape. And as the generations proceed, their connection to the land and to the devta is changing dramatically, which would over a period when you go with like Hinduized, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but mainstreamed versions
Mainstream.
of festival, you can see how they would change also in narrative. And then, like, it brings me back to this beautiful book called Small Gods by Terry Pratchett, which is it's a very cute book. It's a satire on how gods are treated and created. And it's a funny book. So it talks about how, in accordance to how much heed you give to the god, the strength of the god is defined. And as the times are processing, as we move on in time, we realize like the heed given to god is changing. And as you mentioned that they're turning into beggars, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard of it in different contexts, in different cultures, which has happened. But probably, like, Dr. Kapila, maybe you can throw on, Sonali or Mayank, you can throw light on this.
I think I'd like to add, you know what, Aman, you were talking about, and Alisha is right in saying that how they adapt and evolve. If you look, and I can speak from my experience in the Kullu Valley because I've not been to where Selku is, but it's very similar. So, you know, the whole idea of how Dussehra also started, Aman, it started much later when the worship of Ram and Vishnu started in the valley, and you see the Bhakti movement coming in the 16th century. And then you suddenly find Puari Baba, who has ancestry to Rajasthan. And then you have Ayodhya coming up, this whole myth created about the Brahmin priest going to Ayodhya and getting the idol of Ram to cure the king of Kulu from one of the scions or something from leprosy. And that whole thing was created. And then the Dussehra festival at the Kulu grounds, where all the devtas now have to congregate. Now, why is that happening? Is, you know, taxes, allegiance, and there's so many devtas who do not go to the Dussehra festival as well. So if you look back, it all comes down to land ownership and territory. So they're like, you know, these little kingdoms being ruled, you know, and religion and power and state, they're always playing together. So that's what I see of it, right? Like others who are there, and especially Aniket, you know, you've been seeing the modern part of it, but I feel that that's what's happening, and that's what's also been researched, where they have found this to be true. And even the whole idea of the ruts, you know, till about 1880s, there was just one person carrying it, you know, the kardu with the deity, and then suddenly that transformed into something material that is more visible, with the mohras and the face masks and the palki. It was not there before. It came much later in the 1880s, 1890s, to be more visible, to have more people in the congregation. With all this, the caste system and the alliance of the caste system, like who is going to be playing the drums, who's going to be doing this. It's all a fine balance to keep that whole system intact, evolve, adapt, but also intact. So you see this whole thing between continuity and tradition, this whole what do you call that thing, tug of war, which you see in these adaptation mechanisms over time.
Sonali, can I just butt in? I know
Yes.
other people asking questions. Yeah, just to say that, you know, the theory that really has helped me negotiate with all of this is the idea of the invention of traditions. And that actually in the Western Himalayas, you can see in front of your eyes. So, for example, in the Satluj Valley on the Kulu side in Saraj, in Ani, what is called Ani Valley, we went near this, in the sort of village town of Kalash. And there is Jogeshwar, which is like Someshwar, deity of Shiva, right? And he has a sister who's, he has a sister, sister deity, traditionally sister, and they often travel together. But she is supposedly a deity of Kali. So you have this strange invention of tradition where the Shiv deity, who's supposedly Shiv, is the brother of a deity who's supposedly Kali. Now that goes against everything. I mean, Shiv has not a brotherly sibling relation with Kali, right, or the deities of Kali. So there is this invention of tradition happening, whether in dress, whether linking up with the Orthodox Hinduism, and whether in the rituals, the materiality of the rituals, the form of the things, and even with the possession. Aman was with me February when we were traveling in Himachal, and our car was stopped by these three people who have made it into a little trick thing. You know, they'll stop tourist cars, they'll do this 5 minute quick routine of the Devta Pudeshing and everything, and the Devta will start jumping on the bonnet of the car. Kind of. So Aman and all of us had to sort of tough up blackmail money to get out of it. So that's it. Yeah. This is invention of tradition happening in front of our eyes.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, we have the next question from Jenny. Jenny, if you could take over the mic.
Hi everyone. Hi Sonali. Hi Alisha. It's nice to be acquainted with you through this forum here. I was wondering through your travels, during your travels through the valley, have you interacted with the shepherds, and how is their relationship with the spirit different from those attending the festival? Are there anecdotes which you have gathered, rituals, blessings of the herd? And how has the experience of your travels changed you personally? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Jenny. So have I interacted with other shepherds regarding Someshwar? Not directly about, I've never asked them exactly the question of, about Someshwar, but in general about how do they interact with spirits living alone for such extended periods in the Himalayas. So there was a time when I'd taken it upon myself to walk through multiple valleys in Munsiari region, which is the last, like the area where Nepal, India, and Tibet meet, that corner. So you have these wonderful mountains and shepherding communities which live there. And their association with God is, it's almost as somebody who guides them through to do predictions for when things are going to go wrong. So for example, they are far more attuned, and I believe it's because of spending such extended periods in the Himalaya that they have started understanding weather much better. So as somebody who's living in a city like Mukba, in comparison to not a city but a village like Mukba, which is stationary, where you call upon a god, they live with a shepherding spirit which sort of guides them through the unsettled terrains of the Himalayas. So, for example, one story which comes to my mind is somebody I met in these regions ahead of Dharamshala, one of the ranges there, and he was telling that there is a person they can always listen when they're walking, and that whistles, and that when the person whistles in a specific fashion, it's as though that spirit is trying to search for all the lost goats. So if you think here of something like, when you hear of something like that, and then also I've heard of people who have gone mountaineering, is when they are in upper reaches, and even in my personal experience, you can hear an avalanche come, right? But you don't have enough time. So they've heard spirit something trying to knock all the anchors in so that the tent doesn't roll in the avalanche. So they've seen spirits trying to protect them. So one of the first lessons I got when I was learning climbing was do not mess with the spirits there, because if you don't know, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So has it changed? How climbing has changed me as a person? So I picked up climbing to fight depression of sorts, because climbing to me was a way of connecting with nature and also to get a certain amount of decorum in life. So it's three lessons which I primarily learned from it was A, getting a schedule was very important. B, having people who have your back is very important. And C, showing up and delivering is very important. So climbing brought all these three things together for me. So which started as a journey to just try and get in a better understanding of what was happening in my brain, I also learned different forms of it and learned how you can interact with the world with it. So taking from picking up climbing, it has also taken me to like, and as Sonali was when as we were discussing about shamanistic religions and cultures, so there are these tribes, for example, the Jat Ganga has a certain tribe, then there are Shokas in Munsiari, then you have people who live in Zanskar Valley, Spiti Valley. Their interaction is very tantric with nature. And when you start living and having visited them for a short period or lived with them for a short period or extended periods, you'd realize that it's okay to not know, and which is very rare for us to accept as individuals, and to actually just give in into the moment of what. So has it changed me as a person? I believe dramatically. You're a part of the process. You don't know what's happening to you, but yeah, a lot of people here have interacted with the mountains, and perhaps they've like perhaps you've also seen a transformation in you.
So when you leave the mountains and you go back to the city, do you see a stark contrast? Do you long to go back to the mountains? Do you miss the spirit of the mountains, so to speak?
So
Did you
this
become the
I'm going to
scientist again? Did you become a scientist again?
there's this quote which comes. There's a book written by Rene Demol, and not a book, like an excerpt, which goes like Mount Analog. So Rene Demol talks about how, like, somebody asks him, "What's the point of climbing the mountain if you're going to come down? Like, what's the point?" So the way he answers it is, there is an art of conducting yourself from what you've seen on the top. If you no longer can be, but you have known. So even when you come back, you have, having been a participant of the process, you are different. Like, I believe me pre-Selku and post-Selku is different. We are a accumulation of all these different things we experience. And do I long to go back? Yeah, of course. Like, cities are noisy. So, but you have to, like, I'm trying to find a balance in my life. I believe a lot of us here are also trying to strive for that balance, which keeps our personalities within us happy and satiated.
Thank you very much. I hope to get to know you more through Facebook posts and so on, and to communicate
Thank you.
with you. Thank you very much, and nice meeting you.
Likewise, Jenny. Likewise.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about that quote about, reaching the mountain. It's not about conquest. When Edmund Hillary said, I'm climbing it because it's there, of course it's there. But when you go to the top at that journey, the trials, the tribulations, the sweat, the calf muscles, paining, and then you're going on the top and seeing that view and then looking inward, that's what kind of brings in the balance for me. Just not being at the top, but it strikes something inward, that view that you start feeling you're just in an iota of existence, so
Yeah.
and
I'll add a story here, which is of, so one my rope mate. So in climbing, you climb in ropes. So you are, a team is called a rope because you're all tied by one rope. So if avalanche happens, all of you like slide together. So you're tied by the rope. My rope mate in one of my courses was an Everester, and she belongs to Kulu, and they believe in a lot of spirits there. And they were told that there are these spirits on the top of the mountain which protect the mountains. You're not allowed to go. So when she climbed the Everest, she was on the top and she cried. So she walked for like 13 hours continuously to reach the top. She reaches the top and she cries. And she suddenly felt like a little girl inside her just collapsed. Because that little girl had always known that there is a spirit on the top of the mountains. On the top of the highest mountains, especially, there would be a spirit. And then she sees this vast expanse of just sky and other peaks which were below her. She literally stood there and then she's like, this is different. But she's the same person. When she came back, she realized it was not the spirit which is over there. It's a spirit which sort of comes with you and goes back with you. You can't see it, but you feel it. You've changed as a person. So yeah, the calf muscle aching, reaching the top, seeing the sight and going inward and just questioning your own beliefs.
so true. And passion, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take the next question. Harshada, over to the mic.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Alisha. It was really great listening to you. My question is basically what Aniket had asked. I just want to ask further than that. Have you tried to see if that first crop thing is related to fertility in any way?
I'm not the right person to talk about it. I won't know. I believe there's
Okay.
somebody here who does know. Or I can ask it back to you.
No, it's fine. I'll check it out then. Thank you. And so that's it. There was another question, but then it again goes towards academic things. So I think it won't be. You haven't done this as your academic study, right? Hello.
No, it's unfortunate that I still see things through the lens of an academician, but I'm not an anthropologist in this. So, I mean,
Okay.
we can try seeing the question if I can answer, yay. But
Basically, I just want to know, like, about this Palki thing and all. If you have done any comparative analysis with different regions who have the similar type of customs of
no, I
Palki,
have
and
no.
also wherein the god comes in the body of both male as well as females, and they also speak as an authority to the people around them. Because you said that in case in here the females do not have the authority to speak on behalf of god even though the god comes in their body. So that's why I was I wanted to know.
I have a contrary experience. I did not mention about the person in which the spirit comes in the body of the women and it
I
does not
mentioned
speak.
that. I mentioned that
Yeah.
for Western Himalayas, so I can answer that later. You go on.
So when I was walking the Ganga, we had stopped in Sukhi Top, and it was Ashtami, I believe. Yeah, it was the Ashtami Puja because this was done during the spring Navratri, and the spirit came on a lady there, and they specifically told us no camera inside the mandir. So we were standing outside, we were recording things because this was done for a documentation for a certain format, and the spirit actually said authoritatively that you cannot be here, you have to leave. And we were asked to, we were taken out. Though so does the spirit speak only, like in my experience, so this is a plain observation and this is not academically being documented, that yes, the women do harness the devta too, Devi, I believe here. And do they speak authoritatively? They do, in my experience. But I'm not the right person to do a comparison for it.
But not for the male god, right? In the Selku experience, they can't
The
they
male,
can't the if a woman has a male god which comes in a body but she doesn't have the authority, that is what I understood from what you said. Is it?
I don't know about Shilku. I've never seen it in a male, like a male god taking over it. So I don't know the answer to your question because my observation is fairly limited, and all the questions I asked were that I've only seen it come on a male till date. Though Sonali
Okay.
can answer for other places where this happens. Sonali, over to you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Alisha.
So Harshada, what
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
observed, the when the energy comes, right, it comes in women
Mm-hmm.
also, but it doesn't
Uh-huh.
stay in them for a long time.
Okay.
It goes to the person designated. But sometimes
Mm-hmm.
for the males, like they might speak, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not common. But they do. I have seen it happening where the woman has spoken and
Mm-hmm.
a male deity has come
Yes.
in her. It happens. Okay.
That's why I mean I've also seen, that's why I just wanted to know whether it happens in case of Selco also.
Okay, yeah,
That's it.
but
That's why.
like Alisha said, she hasn't observed it. Maybe she goes a number of times. Who knows? She might observe that too. But
Okay.
yeah, so that happens. But the person designated who's been given that position of being the spokesperson, who has
Mm-hmm.
been chosen by the god, is somebody who regularly goes through it, who is a
Okay.
bull, for example, in the Western
Okay.
Himalayas. And of course, their association and what
Okay.
the commonalities are that, the use of iron is very, very common. And I feel that this
Mm-hmm.
practice, maybe it goes back to the Iron Age as well. And also
Okay.
the Epic Age, when we talk about the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and these associations in the Kullu Valley that what I have noticed, and that's what I have been
Yes.
writing about. I've been writing about that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Aniket has another question.
Yes, it's not a question, just a comment. To the extent that I agree with much of what has been said about, the importance of taking possession and the whole everything that happens around the position seriously, and not think of it as trickery or some sort of magic or something. Magic in the modern sense of kisi sarkar kind of magic. But as magic as we understood it, yet I think we should also sort of temper our understanding of this by realizing that definitely in Himachal, and I've also heard about it from Uttarakhand, that a lot of the effort now is to try and, so basically Congress and BJP politics have gone into the selection of goods. So in the Satluj Valley, in the Tons Valley, these are called goods. And people who live there can bear me out that a lot of these places, there's now serious work which happens, that once one good goes, then the next good is coming, which is the shaman, who's going to be the main possessee of the god, and whether it will be the BJP guy or it will be the Congress guy. So that is also happening in villages. So we need to understand both things. It's not make believe. It is not trickery, but it is also Congress BJP politics, and I'm sure that's true in the area you are.
But Aniket, I was thinking that they were able to transcend the boundaries of caste when it came to the girl being selected by the gods, because it doesn't matter what caste you belong to. You can be a low caste or a high caste. But these party affiliations, there's a whole, I don't know. I'm sure it must be happening in some areas, but mostly when the guru is selected, they have to go through a whole process of initiation, and also some tasks that they're supposed to do, like kind of repeating the history of the good and the devta. And this is where I saw a question on the chat, like when did Someshwar begin? Even though it is not written, the shaman is in a position to narrate the entire history of where this devta came from, how did they come, what happened, everything verbally, so it's passed on through the shaman. And if he is not in a position to talk about it, then he is not the shaman. That's also true.
I agree with you totally. I'm not denying that at all. But right now, I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm talking to people, and I don't know whether they would want this to be in open and in what form. And maybe when I finally write about it, these places and people might be anonymized. But I know for a fact that I know of a whole 10-year politics which went on because people realized one of the booths within, let's say, 100 kilometers of Shimla was going to pass on, and there was an intense work which went on. There was like 3-4 years of work which went on to see that the next good is Hamare side ka, which means basically either Congress or BJP. And of course, there's a caste angle to that, and I'm sure this is, I've heard when I recounted this to others, they gave examples कि उस गांव में ये हुआ था और वहां भी ऐसा हुआ था, वो वोट पहले कांग्रेस के साइड पे था और वो बीजेपी की साइड पे, वोट चेंज, right? So these are things also which are happening. So it's I think we need to understand more holistically that while it is not trickery, it is not PC Sarkar, but it is also Congress BJP. I mean that also happens, and that's also real as the Palki becoming federal.
Yeah, because obviously the Gur is also human, and he has voting rights, and he has the choice of having his own affiliations, as and of course whether he keeps those affiliations intact when he goes into possession is the moot point, which is very important.
I can add a story about something which happens in Zanskar. So in Zanskar Valley, you have like, at least in all the Himalayan villages I have been in Zanskar and Spiti, especially in Zanskar, the role of religion was not only to give, say, they also held land and held a very strong administrative power over the communities. So where the monastery was placed, where the new extension of monastery was built, it was always going to be in a higher ground, because in the valley they can oversee the land. So if it, like when a spirit comes upon an individual, and like it would be surprising to me if the person who is being tested to be the shaman on whom the spirit would come on would carry his own individual biases into future of when the spirit comes on. So individual biases should not speak technically, like when the spirit is in the body, because you've transcended that. Like there's a stark change in the way a face looks. A stark, the face changes. It's different. The complexion changes, the way eyes pop changes, the ears change, the color of the skin changes, which which is as though the person is in trance, and it's hard to put that on by volition. So I would be very surprised to know if they're carrying their political beliefs into the performance of when the spirit is in the body, but this is quite interesting. Thanks for raising that.
Yeah, and it's very, very important. Aniket, that's I'll be on the lookout now. Anyway, okay.
Yeah,
So
maybe
yeah,
another year or two, I'll write something about this. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the research I wanted to do, in fact, I wanted to look at based on what Mark Elmore has done. Recently, there's this book on the Hadimba goddess and others. I was actually keen on looking at deities along the Satluj Valley and similar to Selku and others. But unfortunately, COVID, so no people for it.
okay. We have no more questions, but I would like to make a few announcements. So those of you who joined us late, next weekend, we have Kelvin Wilson, who will be talking about a palette of yesteryears, discovering narrative in the visualization of the far past. So Kelvin is an archaeological illustrator with a lot of experience working in Egypt, especially, and in other parts of the world, Europe and all. And his, I, I would really want all of you who are not archaeologists also to join. It's a very enriching talk. I also want to thank Alisha. And this goes on to say that even if you're not a PhD scholar, the kind of passion and the keen observations that you have are very, very important. And it was so wonderful listening to you today and understanding, and discussing about Selku, which, I had no clue about till I got to know from you and Mayank. So thank you for opening that up for us. And I think Jenny has a question. Oh, she's asking how long does the spirit lasts in the person being possessed? If you can just let her know that. Um,
It's almost from the point of when it comes to the body to the end of the village. So there are these areas marked. So it's pretty much till the person walks on the dungers, on the axles. So that would be maybe 1 hour maximum. In Mumbai it was 1 hour. In Sukhi it was 10 minutes. But also it's a process. It doesn't happen like a switch. So it's slowly coming on. You can see it's slowly like the spirit taking over. But the performance of walking on the dangers is usually like maximum half an hour to 1 hour till the end of the village. And in Sukhi, it was 10 minutes.
okay. Thanks. So Jenny, your question is answered. So we, believe it or not, have had 23 lectures. Most of them, only 2 lectures are not online. The first 2, because I was using my iPad at that time and I had forgotten my Zoom password to record it on my laptop. So, technical glitches. So those lectures were of Dr. Anjali Kapila on the Ganga. I think it was on the Ganga or the Women of the Himalayas. And Dr. Janvit Sharma on the Western Himalayas. So maybe, sometime this year I'll call them back again so we can record. And at this point, I do want all of you who've been speakers to think about writing something on this so that we can have our first volume of the journal of the Himalayan Institute of Cultural and Heritage Studies. And in due course, we'll get together and with the other scholars and think about ways of how we can have it be a journal which is peer reviewed and the word limit and the font and all those technical things, but that's what we are aiming for. So I really want all of you who are interested, scholar or not a scholar, to engage with us. Whoever wants to speak, please write into me. This month I have Kelvin Amr, he's from Egypt. He'll be talking about ethnobotany. Dr. Manan Desai, who is a biochemist, he'll be talking about his experiences in the Himalayas and on ethnobotany. I'll be talking about pottery. We'll have Dr. Prabhakar from the Archaeological Survey of India, now at IIT in Ahmedabad. He will be talking about excavations. So we'll have a month full of material culture for all of you. So I hope all of you join, whether you are anthropologists or non-archaeologists, please do join us. And so looking forward to next Sunday with all of you yet again. And Alisha, thanks so very much. And I would ask you to leave us with some words of wisdom that we always do. So could you kind of leave us with that?
First of all, thank you everybody for joining in. It means a lot. It's a very wide topic. I struggled a lot to put all of it together because it was if like the whole story of Someshwar and of Frederick Wilson, they all intertwine. It's not these like we think, at least from my training, we think in silos, and it's important to transcend those silos and to connect different things. So shepherding, deforestation of land, at the same time how information travels within the valleys, at the same time how spirits engage people and bring them together. They all sit together, they're all connected. And a platform like this allows people, for example, I never knew about how shamanistic cultures in different parts of India exist and are practiced. And if we can all learn and borrow from each other to create a larger narrative than our own disciplines. So I'm very grateful for everybody who has joined, and I'm very grateful to you, Sonali, to Mayank, who I don't know where he is, and Mayank and Dr. Kapila for actually considering me to give a talk about this. And I am very glad to be here. I would be bothering with questions next time as an audience. I'll be very happy to do that. So thank you.
Thanks, Alisha. And for those of you, why Mayank is absent here, he's been listening in, but his cousin is afflicted of COVID, so he's in hospital. So we hope that he recuperates soon. And I don't know where Dr. Anjali Kapila is. Earlier on, she said she was with her sister, and I think we lost her somewhere there. But Alisha, you answered everything beautifully, and we would love to have you on, as you go on with your passion and your research, and share it with us. And all of those who are here and spending their Sunday evening with us, or Sunday early morning like me, so grateful to all of you, really. And have a great week ahead, and be safe. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.